Daniel Foster was never one to ignore an adventure. As a seasoned travel writer, he prided himself on finding the world's hidden gems, untouched places where time stood still. When he stumbled upon an old leather-bound journal in a dusty antique store, its yellowed pages whispered secrets of a mysterious village that had long been erased from modern maps. It was called Valentine. The journal spoke of cobblestone streets, a grand clock tower that had stopped ticking centuries ago, and a legend about a traveler who had gone in, but never come out. Daniel, naturally, was intrigued. So, one misty autumn morning, he packed his bags, rented a car, and drove out into the hills of New England, where the journal had hinted at Valentine's location. The roads narrowed as he drove deeper into the countryside. Civilization faded behind him, replaced by towering trees and winding paths. His GPS lost signal hours ago, leaving him to navigate with an old-fashioned paper map. And then, as if appearing from nowhere, he saw it. Valentine. A small sign, its wood rotting and words barely legible, greeted him at the entrance. "Welcome to Valentine. No visitors after dark." The village looked frozen in time. Old-fashioned gas lamps lined the streets, though they flickered weakly despite it being midday. The cobblestones beneath his feet felt uneven, as if they had been untouched for centuries. The people, if you could call them that, watched him. They were pale, their clothes outdated by at least 100 years. Some whispered behind their hands. Others just stared. An elderly woman, hunched over and wrapped in a heavy cloak, shuffled toward him. "You shouldn't be here," she murmured. Daniel smiled. "I'm just passing through. Thought I'd explore a bit. Maybe write about this place." At the word, "right," her face twisted into something between fear and anger. "You'll want to leave before sundown," she hissed before scurrying away into the nearest shop. Daniel's curiosity only grew. He walked further into the village, taking notes, snapping a few photos, though his camera screen flickered strangely whenever he tried to capture certain buildings. The clock tower in the center of town loomed above everything, its hands frozen at 11:59. He had the strangest feeling he was being watched. The clock strikes 12. As the sun dipped lower, Daniel realized something unsettling. There were no modern amenities. No power lines, no cars, no signs of technology at all. Even stranger, the people were vanishing. Stores closed their shutters. Doors locked. By the time the church bell tolled 6 times, the streets were empty. Daniel's hotel, if it could be called that, was a small, dimly lit building at the edge of town. The innkeeper handed him an old brass key. "Stay in your room. Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone." Daniel chuckled. "Sounds serious." The innkeeper's expression did not change. "It is." That night, as Daniel lay in bed, the village came alive. Not with people, but with sounds. Footsteps echoed on cobblestones. Whispers slithered through the cracks in his door. And then, the clock tower. It chimed 12 times. And outside his window, where the village square had been empty just hours ago, they stood. Figures, wrapped in shadow, their faces obscured. Watching. Waiting. And then, they started moving toward the inn. Daniel's breath caught in his throat as he stared out the window. The figures in the village square moved in eerie unison, their heads tilted toward the clock tower as if waiting for some unspoken signal. Their faces were obscured, some hidden beneath tattered hoods, others blurred as though reality refused to hold them in focus. Then, as one, they turned toward the inn. A slow, deliberate march began. Their footsteps were impossibly silent on the cobblestones, yet Daniel could hear them, like whispers against his skin. He stumbled backward from the window, heart pounding. A knock at his door. Soft, polite, almost patient. "Traveler." A voice slithered through the wood. "Come outside." Daniel clenched his fists, his mind racing. He glanced around the small, candle-lit room. No phone. No weapons. The only exit was the window, but the drop was too high. Another knock. This one firmer. He backed away until his legs hit the bed. The old brass key the innkeeper had given him sat on the nightstand, glinting dully in the candlelight. "Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone." The key trembled as he slid it into the lock. A satisfying click. Silence. Then, scratching. Something dragged against the door. Slow, deliberate, like nails raking over wood. Daniel's breath hitched as shadows cooled beneath the doorframe, curling like mist into his room. He clamped a hand over his mouth. They couldn't come in. They couldn't. A whisper, inches from his ear. "Not yet." The next thing Daniel knew, sunlight streamed through his window. He sat up with a jolt, his heart still hammering. The clock on the wall read 8 a.m. He checked his watch, also 8 a.m. His phone, despite having no signal, confirmed the same. But something was wrong. His candle had burned down to nothing. His bedsheets were disheveled. And his door. It was unlocked. Daniel swallowed hard. He distinctly remembered locking it. He crossed the room hesitantly, reaching for the knob. It turned too easily, creaking open. The hallway outside was empty, as if nothing had happened. The innkeeper was gone. The entire inn was eerily still. Daniel found a single note left on the front desk. "You were lucky. Leave before nightfall." Outside, the village was normal. Too normal. The market bustled with activity. Shopkeepers arranged their wares. Children played in the square. It was as if the eerie events of the night before had never happened. But Daniel knew better. The people still watched him. Their smiles were too wide, their eyes too empty. And the clock tower, still frozen at 11:59. A woman approached him as he walked. She was the first to look genuinely afraid, her hands trembling as she passed him a folded scrap of parchment. "Do not trust the daylight." He turned to ask her what she meant, but she was gone. Vanished into the crowd like mist in the wind. Daniel's instinct screamed at him to leave, but his curiosity was stronger. He had come for answers, and he wouldn't leave without them. He decided to visit the clock tower. The tower loomed over the village, its stone weathered and cracked. The heavy wooden doors groaned as he pushed them open. Inside, dust floated in the dim light filtering through stained glass windows. The massive gears of the clock sat motionless, rusted with time. But the air, it felt wrong. At the center of the room stood a lone figure. An old man, dressed in soot-covered clothes, hunched over an ancient set of blueprints. "You shouldn't be here," the man muttered without looking up. Daniel cleared his throat. "Neither should this village." The old man let out a dry chuckle. "Clever. But curiosity is a curse, traveler. One that brings only sorrow." Daniel stepped closer. "Why does the clock never strike midnight?" The old man finally met his gaze. His eyes were hollow, rimmed with shadows that seemed to move on their own. "Because when it does," he whispered, "the village remembers." Daniel shivered. "Remembers what?" The clockmaker hesitated, then grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "You need to leave before sundown. Before they forget you exist." Daniel pulled away and ran out of the tower. The sun was beginning to set. The villagers' faces grew distant, as if they were forgetting themselves. Or worse, forgetting him. His footsteps pounded against the cobblestones as he rushed toward his car. But when he reached the spot where he had parked, nothing. Just an empty stretch of road. Panic clawed at his chest. He turned back to the village, only to find it had changed. The buildings were older, crumbling. The villagers, gone. All except one. The young woman who had given him the note now stood in the street, her face stricken with sorrow. "It's too late," she whispered. Daniel's voice cracked. "What do you mean?" She stepped forward, touching his arm. The warmth of her hand sent a jolt through him. "You were never meant to leave." The clock tower chimed. Midnight. A wave of darkness rushed through the village. The air grew thick, suffocating. The world around him blurred. Daniel tried to run, but his body wouldn't move. The young woman's grip tightened. "You're part of the village now," she murmured. "Just like the others." The shadows crept closer, whispering his name. Memories flickered and faded. His past, his travels, his own name. The last thing he saw was the clock tower's hands. 12 o'clock. Then, nothing. Just silence. Years later, another traveler found a journal in an old antique shop. Its pages were filled with stories of a village that didn't exist on any map. A village called Valentine. And at the very end, scrawled in shaky handwriting, "If you find this, do not go looking."